Well, hello. Good afternoon. I'm Mark Osmak, and welcome to the first episode of Ask a Candidate a Question. So we're going to be doing this once a week, and it's a good opportunity for me to get to know more people, more voters, but also to answer any questions that might be hanging around in people's minds. So just in case anybody doesn't know, my name is Mark Osmak, and I'm born and raised here in St. Louis. Went to a bunch of different school districts, I think about 4 or 5 here in the area. And then after that, went to Mizzou and I studied English literature and got out, joined the Army, served 2 tours in Afghanistan, the first in 2010 to 2011, and the second 2013 to 14. Came back and I used the GI Bill to go back to school, earn my master's in public administration in the evenings at George Washington. And during the daytime, I worked on the Hill, and initially for Senator Claire McCaskill. That was followed by, at the time, Representative Tammy Duckworth, and then finally with the minority staff on the House Armed Services Committee. But anyway, so came back here to St. Louis, thankfully, and we announced our campaign last July. So with that, I will get to just some questions that we have. There are 4. One of them is from Misty Michael, and that's on Facebook, and she asks, what are you going to do to stop mass incarceration? And so she attached a link to an article that you can check out on Mark Osmak for Democrat for Congress. And if you haven't shared this video, I would love if you did. It just helps get the word out more and gets more people exposed to what we're talking about. So, so the first aspect of the great question about what we're going to do to end mass incarceration. A lot of this has to do with nonviolent criminals. So one of the things I've been thinking about is how can we improve this, but in terms of, say, nonviolent offenders, I think sending those who are struggling with addiction to prison is about as smart as sending a murderer to a hospital. So we're sending the wrong people to the wrong place for the wrong reasons. So part of this is just the war on drugs that has not worked, and I've said this hopefully very, very clearly. I have never smoked weed. I've never done an illegal substance. I obviously drink, and I used to smoke cigarettes back in the day, but nothing illegal. But the point being, I think addressing that or sending people who are convicted of a drug nonviolent felony or offense to prison is absolutely the wrong thing to do. So we're looking at the wrong perspective and the wrong lens. So treatment and prevention, I think, are much more important than sending someone to prison for that. And furthermore, when people do get out of prison, there has got to be a way to basically allow people to move past that. So if people are forever checking a box that I'm a felon or I have been arrested or I have been convicted, I mean, look, they served their time, assuming that they're guilty, they've served their time, it's time to move on. And so to punish someone either not being allowed to vote or not being allowed to have a loan to go back to school, to college or trade school, not being allowed to get a loan for a home, we're putting people in an almost definitely an unenviable position, but one position that people find very, very difficult to get out of. So that's where I stand on that. We got to do a better job. We send too many people to prison for the wrong reasons, and those who struggle with addiction, of which has impacted my family, my stepsister, and she has said I can use her as a story. But what started off as being treated for, or what started off as a toothache, lost her insurance, and then that turned into opioids, and then that turned into heroin, and there you go. So got out of hand very, very quickly, but thankfully she's still recovering now, and you're never fully done, but she's doing better now. So hopefully that answers the question. And I also should say, if I don't answer the question, it's not because I'm being cute or funny or political, it's because I failed to answer the question. So please type and say, hey, that's not what I wanted to know. So another question from Julie, and that's on Twitter, and that's at @AlpineGoodTime. And so she was asking about paper ballots and cyber threats when it comes to basically computer voting. So I'm 35, I'll be 36 in about a month and a half. I'm a bit of an old soul. I still have Matlock seasons on VHS, so I vote paper ballots. That's just me. That's what I choose to do whenever I vote. When I can, is just a paper ballot. So I agree that there are definitely concerns. No voting method is infallible or perfect. I do choose ballots. I'm not at all insinuating that using electronic ballot is not safe, but it definitely has additional concerns. One thing that's really important in voting is that people believe that the system works. So that it's not that there won't be one or two mistakes. It's that the system at large does work and does accurately represent the people. So if we lose that trust, which is what I think some people are trying to do, and say to kind of diminish the validity of how some election results turn out, that's more detrimental than I think than a one and the two offenses, which need to be carried out and looked into. But the loss of confidence in our system is bigger. To kind of go on to that shift a little bit over, I think that as soon as you turn 18, unless you actively opt out, congratulations, you are now a registered voter. Voting is a right, as is the practice of free speech. I don't have to ask anybody. I don't have to ask anybody to do this video. It's free speech. So as such, if you're 18, congratulations, you are now a registered voter, unless you actively decide not to do that. Which I don't know how many people do, but it just lowers the threshold. It lowers the barriers to entry in that. So hopefully, Alpine, that gets your question. But I use paper, but that's just me because, like I said, I'm kind of an old soul. But as long as there's good oversight from third-party entities and we have good cybersecurity, which is always going to be a risk, especially now. I'm sure that the inference was Russia's influence on the elections in the past, whether that be through fake stories, fake news, fake media, but also the possibility they can enter our ballot booths. I totally understand, and until we get better, I know it's going to be a big concern, but hopefully that answers it. And then DNA, so it's like a few stars and DNA, then other stars, and that's on Twitter. She says, I wonder how you or Democrats in general can do a better job spreading the message. The shutdown was a missed opportunity, as is current discussions about market and jobs growth. So I think that's kind of an issue at a larger issue as a whole. What can Democrats do to communicate things better? I think one of that is, what is our message? What is our platform? What are our stances? For me, it is I am against right to work. I am pro-labor. I am pro-unions. And I think there's a lot of room for improvement on what we can do as far as being clear, even if people disagree with it, whether that's, look, if it's the hot button issues of abortion, right to work, or LGBTQ rights, let's just clearly state what we believe in and give an explanation as to why. And I personally would much rather have people disagree with that than to have people wondering or ambiguous about where I stand or why I stand for what I stand for. So what can we do for messaging? I think it's to be clear and to just state, this is what we are for, this is what we are against, and here's why. But I also think there has to be room in this party, and all parties, but the Democratic Party, for opposing views. And so there's a spectrum of where we all fall on kind of like on the scale of things. But there's a lot of room for discussion, but also I think we can clearly and concisely stipulate what we believe in. For instance, for me, I am anti-right to work. I am for a woman's right to choose. And this comes at great risk, in a way, to myself, just in what I'm pursuing. The district, as you know, in the 2nd District, is a little more conservative in some areas. But I will say this to give hope. Jason Kander won the 2nd District. Hillary Clinton, while losing the 2nd District, performed better than Barack Obama did in 2012. And the biggest thing, and I love saying this and I often forget, but in 2000, and I mean this in all respect and deference, in 2000, in the state of Missouri, this state elected a deceased Democrat, Mel Carnahan, over a live Republican in John Ashcroft. So that's how Democrat this state was. And I don't think there's a huge difference in where a lot of different areas and people are coming from in that. But it seems like 1,000 years ago that this state was Democrat, but it really wasn't. It was 18 years ago. It was in our lifetime. It was in this generation. And so in Jefferson County, so Fenton and Arnold, and Festus is to the south, but that's not in the district, they were Blue Dog. And so it's a very, very, very strong Union area that I would argue has not had a good reason to kind of come back to the Democratic Party. And they've been forgotten. They've been pushed aside. But since I spent 5 years there in the Fox District in Fenton, Chancellor Farms Trailer Park, 352 Dover Lane, different trailer, but same address. So I get where people are coming from there and their concerns, and I think there's a lot of room for discussion on that. Sally Denton asks, what is the first step to improving healthcare in Missouri? I think that it's ensuring and clearly stating that healthcare should not be dependent on how much you make. The fact that Representative Ann Wagner or anybody else in Congress, whether they be a senator or a United States representative, has access to healthcare that the constituents do not, is wrong. So I've spent, coming up in March, will be my 10-year anniversary in the Army. And the first rule of leadership in any of the 5 branches is that you never expect or demand anything of anyone that you have not done or are not willing to do yourself. So what I'm saying is I should not have access to health care that people in Missouri do not. Right now, I pay $46.09 a month in health care because of TRICARE Select. I'm in the Army Reserves. Joining the Army was the best thing I've ever done in my life. That said, I don't think you should have to join the Army or the military to have affordable health care and quality health care. I don't think you should have to go to prison to have affordable or quality health care. And I really don't think you should have to go to Congress to have good health care. So the bottom line, if Representative Ann Wagner has that kind of quality of health care, congratulations, hominis dominus. Now everybody does. That's the standard. That should be the standard. And so it's pretty audacious for her or anybody else to come back to the district or to the home state or to represent the United States. And the people that you represent don't have the quality of healthcare that you have. That's wrong all across the board. To be clear, healthcare should not be profitable, or it should not be for profit. It's our health. It's my health. It's your health. It's whether it's mental care or receiving or paying for prescription drugs. It should not be an option for people to make tons and tons and tons of money off of that. God forbid, the worst thing ever is that you need to have a surgical or a surgery done, receive medical treatment or prescriptions that you can't afford. If we're the greatest nation in the world, then I think we should be able to master this. Just let you know some of the foundations that I come from. When I look at these things, look, I love the United States. I think there's a lot of other ways, a lot of other countries that we can look to. We cannot be so arrogant to think that we have all the answers to everything. We don't. Other nations have been doing this a lot longer than we have, and there are things that we have done much, much better, and there are things that other nations and other areas have done much, much better. So let's look at it and try not to reinvent the wheel. So hopefully, Sally, that answers that question. One issue that keeps coming up is money in politics. It is the bane of my existence. I think it's the bane of a lot of candidates' existence. What are we going to do? Simply stated, the person who has the most money is not unequivocally the best candidate. And I would still say that if I had the most money, which, a little secret, I don't, but those who have the most money are not the best candidates. That just means they're the richest at that moment. And so I don't have that kind of deep wealthy network. It's not wrong, it's not bad, and someone who does is not wrong or bad. It's just I don't. So I think the first thing is we have to understand that money is not always should not always be free speech, and that's my thoughts on Citizens United. The worst Supreme Court decision in my lifetime, I think, was Citizens United, and I think a lot of people would argue with that or agree with that. So how can we keep money out of politics? Look, long story short, I think the best way is to have publicly financed elections. Period. If there's another way, I'm open to it. But vacuums only exist for so long. So that comes in terms of power vacuums, that comes in terms of monetary vacuums. If someone or something is not filling that, it will be filled, and we're not going to like probably how that's filled. So meaning, if people and citizens of the United States, or in this case, the 2nd Congressional District, St. Louis, the state of Missouri, the United States of America, if we're not filling that need to finance elections, someone else will. And I don't care if it's a Democrat or Republican thing, someone or something else will, and we're not going to like who that person is. And that's where dark money comes in. That's where PAC money comes in. But to be blunt, we can't have it both ways. We can't say out of one side of our mouth, I want money out of politics, but also not be willing to give a dollar. So it's which one do we want to have? And I understand that asking people for dollars is not pleasant, it's not fun. I can't stand it. I don't think any candidate or elected official does at any level, city, state, or federal. It is right now the necessity. So I think the way to get around that is we all pitch in. And so that's a tough thing to go to people and bring up what either is diverting taxes in one way or another, but also just, or to increase taxes to ensure that we have publicly financed elections. And I don't want to increase it for that. I would rather divert money from something else that we can put into publicly financed elections. So Matthew asked, we all go into public service for some reason. What specifically drives your candidacy, and what drew you to run for congressional representative? So great question, Matt. I in the best way, I am forced and compelled to do this. I've wanted to do this since I was a kid, and when I say forced or compelled, it's an emotional thing for me, because serving others, serving the public, whether that be at a not-profit or not-for-profit, or in this case, government, whether that be at the city, state, or federal level, I have to do it. There is something that pulls me to do it. It's one thing to point out problems and say the roads are bad, or we shouldn't be in this conflict and we shouldn't be doing this or that. It's another thing to say, well, here's what we can do. And it's pretty easy. Anybody can point out the problems, but to actually present solutions. That's what I get really, really excited about. I understand it's not the sexiest thing to kind of pursue or to impress people with, that I want to be involved with policy, and that's what I love, but I do. And I have. And so serving others, this is what I can do. My mom's a chaplain, my dad's a nurse practitioner, and God knows I can't go into clergy, and I medicine and the medical field is not my arena, but for some reason my mind is attracted and kind of works in a much different way when it comes to policy issues. And so working for Senator McCaskill, working for, at the time, Representative, now Senator Tammy Duckworth, and then in the House Armed Services Committee, it exposed me to totally different levels of leadership and policy, and also, but also the pitfalls and challenges that come with that. How much is it going to cost? Who's paying for it? It's tough, but to me, that's really exciting. So I would be running if Donald Trump were not president. I would be running if Representative Ann Wagner were not the current Congresswoman. This is what I'm compelled to do. We can do better, and we have to. I think people should expect more. I think they should demand more. And that everything from healthcare to criminal justice reform to ensuring that education, not just schools, not just colleges and universities, but trade schools are properly funded. Look, we have the money as a federal and state government. I would argue it's not being allocated correctly. It's not being prioritized correctly. So part of that is looking at the defense budget. And this is coming from an Army guy. And I do not represent the United States Army or DOD, their views or anything. These views are mine. We have the money, but I would argue it's not being spent correctly. And so that's where I would look to and focus on social services. Whatever we can define as a common good, whether that be transportation, education, healthcare, childcare, those should not be dependent upon how wealthy you are. So I think the biggest issue, some of the big issues when it comes to monetary concerns, yes, how much we make an hour is a grave issue, but I would also argue it's how much access do we have to the common good. So this has been really fun. I want to thank, I want to get everyone right. Matthew, thank you very much for asking. Sally Denton for asking. Misty Michael, Julie, for posting their questions. I try to answer everything that I can, and we're going to be doing this once a week. So even the hard questions, please, 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 please ask me. You might see me stutter and stammer, but that's okay. That's what I'm supposed to do. So whatever I can do to answer questions, put me on the spot. That's what this should be. This should be a vetting process to make sure that the person that you vote for, if it's not me, I understand. I just want to make sure that all the information is out there and that we make this best decision that we can going forward, so that we can put St. Louis back on the map where it should be, in Missouri and the United States. So with that, thank you all very much, and enjoy the rest of your day. And if you didn't get a chance to watch, which you're not watching now, don't worry, this will be posted and archived, and you can watch it later. So thanks very much, and have a great, great lunch. Bye-bye.